It's time to find out which Larceny Barrel Proof was the best in 2024. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So today we get to do something that I absolutely love doing at the end of the year, and that's blind taste testing all three Larceny Barrel Proof releases from 2024. I try to collect all three of these every single year. I really like the line and am always interested to see which one comes out on top, especially at the end of the year when I get to blind them all together. I do the same thing with Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, but today we're here to see which Larceny is the best. Before we dive in, I do want to keep this video quick, so just going to mention two things. One, Larceny Barrel Proof, it's a barrel strength offering from Heaven Hill. It's their wheated mash bill, usually in that 6 to 8 year old range, and almost always in that like mid 120s proof wise. And then second thing is this year, it's very interesting. I don't feel like there's particularly a stellar bottle that stands out in my mind from this year's releases of Larceny Barrel Proof. I don't really have any dog in the fight. It's been a while since I've tasted a couple of these. So we're just going in with really no expectations, hoping to discover which one's the best. So without further ado, let me clear this off the table, get it all poured up, and we'll dive in. Okay, one jump cut later and we are ready to roll. Got the 3 bottles poured up. These are mixed up. I have no idea what the order is. We're ready to dive in. They have been opening up for about 10 minutes now, so hopefully that allows more flavors to come through. We'll start down on this end. We'll call this glass number 1, 2, 3. I don't call them A, B, and C when I do Larceny Barrel Proof because that gets really confusing because that's what the name of the batches are. So this is glass 1. We're gonna dive in on the nose. So it smells like barrel proof wheated bourbon. Yeah, weedy, a little bit of chocolate, caramel butterscotch streak in there as well. Some ethanol still really clinging to this one, so it's taken me a second to kind of pick out the flavors beneath that. Yeah, vanilla, cherry, some chocolate, and a nice dose of like just pure wheat or wheat bread. All right, solid start, but again, that's just like almost exactly what you expect from a Larceny Barrel Proof, in my mind at least. All right, let's go into glass 2 here. Ooh, okay. So not dissimilar to glass 1. Less of a cherry vanilla, more of that wheat coming through. Really nice wheat bread presence to this nose. A darker caramel coming through for me. Some spiciness, less ethanol and more spice for me on this second glass. Just a little peppery. But it's very similar DNA. I just think it's going a little darker tones. Glass 1 had some more bright tones with that cherry vanilla thing. This one settles more into that wheat, maybe a darker chocolate, and a kind of deeper caramel. All right, rounding us out is glass 3. Let's see how this one goes on the nose. Ooh, interesting. It feels the most in your face of the noses. So the ethanol's there. The caramel feels a little bit more forward for me. Yeah, definitely more of just like a middle of the road caramel experience. Some heat though. Yeah, the ethanol's stinging on this one. Hopefully these continue to open up. We can revisit the nose as we go, but this one has the most medium caramel, aggressive. It just kind of pops out of the glass a little bit more. Still that wheat. But yeah, I'd say glass 1 is definitely the brighter of the 3. Glass 2 gets into that deeper, darker, more wheated experience. and glass 3 is somewhere in the middle. Okay, the palate is where we'll get a lot more information, so let me dig in here and start with glass 1. Okay, so the wheat's coming alive here on the nose. Okay, cheers. Dang. Talk about wheat forward. That is extra wheaty. It's like a chocolate covered croissant if the croissant was made out of wheat bread. Yeah, it's lots of chocolate. Nice sort of middle of the road milk chocolate, but the wheat is right at the core of it. It's got this simmering spice. Not as many bright notes. I didn't get as much of the cherry or vanilla on the palate. I got more of that wheat and chocolate bready quality. It's got a good mouthfeel. The spice kind of bloomed up in the middle of the sip and then tapered itself slowly down for the finish, which is continuing for quite a while. Goes more into a brown sugar, slight molasses thing on the finish. But I think the two dominant notes were that chocolate and that wheat. Okay, so I'm gonna get water between each sip here. I'll refresh my palate, then we'll dive into glass 2. Okay, glass 2 on the palate. Weedy, caramely. All right, cheers. Okay, interesting. Almost the exact opposite of experience of what glass 1 and 2 were on the nose is coming into the palate. So now glass 2 is this higher register, a little bit brighter. The caramel is there though, way more caramel. Nice, like almost like you had a Milky Way. There's some of that chocolate, but the nice medium caramel to it. And then it kind of lightens up even as the sip goes on into a toasted sugar, vanilla finish. There's some spice in there. This one did taste a little thinner on the palate for me, but that's part of the whole experience. I think is like a little bit higher register, brighter on the palate with that caramel. But I really like how it settles into that sort of toasted sugars and vanilla finish for me. It's caramel forward, and I'm surprised compared to glass 1. We really taken a turn, and their noses almost deceived me a little bit. All right, let's go to glass 3. Okay, so we're diving into glass 3 here on the palate. This one's definitely spicy on the nose. All right, cheers. Fascinating. Okay. So it's always interesting to do all three because they share such similar DNA. Their mash bills are exactly the same. They're roughly the same age. And so the differences here are subtle. They all taste similar. But what I've learned to track a little bit more as I experience whiskey is where your flavor experience happens in your mouth. Sounds a little weird, but like I said, glass 2 felt like it was a little higher register, maybe a roof of the mouth, tip of the tongue kind of experience. Glass 3 is all back of the throat, like a spicy, peppery thing. It's almost like a red chili pepper that you just ate and it kind of sticks in the back of your throat. That's what I got for this one in terms of the spice. There's still a caramel similar to glass 2. There's like a streak of that brighter caramel. But what I feel like is dominant here is a spice. And the chocolate, which is kind of on all three, the chocolate here is more in that like cocoa powder experience for me. So more of a spicy, prickly whiskey, not in a bad way, just in that's how I experienced it, in kind of the whole enveloping way it goes over your palate, but then into the back of the throat. Okay, so really interesting. I don't feel like there's a super clear front runner yet. They're just subtly different in very interesting ways, which means I'm gonna have to pick them apart a little bit. So I'm gonna go back in reverse order, then do some A/B testing here and really get down to the nitty gritty. Gonna cut through all that for you guys so that it's a much quicker video, and then I will recap all of that and we'll pick our winner. Sound good? Then let's do that. All right, everybody, we're ready to dive back in. We've gone back and forth, we've tasted a lot, we've got our definitive order here. It did take a little while. I do feel like these are all Very solid Larceny Barrel Proof options. They're all good whiskey. I don't know if any one of is like truly stellar again, so it didn't really have one that was standing out clearly above the rest, so it was pretty close. But I do have a winner for a couple of different reasons, but we'll start with what was in third place tonight. What ultimately came in third place for me was Glass 3. I really think it's intriguing with the amount of spice that comes to the back of the throat on this one, but that came with a slight astringency that just didn't quite go away, and maybe just gave it a slight off note compared to the other two. But the chocolate and caramel is still there, and the spice is peppery and in your face like you want a barrel strength thing to be. It just didn't quite have the sweetness that I felt on the other two. So let's see what Glass 3 was. This is A124. That is ultimately what I think I remember most from A124 was kind of that back of the throat spice, a little more cocoa powder, a little bit more red chili pepper. Very interesting. It did stand out among the other two, but tonight I was definitely going toward these more sweet, richer profiles that I think the other two present. Okay, so we've got our last two here. This one was pretty close. I did go back and forth between these two quite a bit. Kind of had to nitpick each one. Ultimately though, I decided on Glass 2 as my second place. So we really did go 3, 2, 1. Glass 2, very sweet. The caramel's really nice on this. It definitely sweetens up even toward the finish. But there were reasons I liked Glass 1 better. Let's see what Glass 2 was, which will ultimately reveal our winner too. Okay. That is B524. I think that the nice strain of caramel on this guy is great. I think that the chocolate is great. What I feel like it lacks that truly stellar Larceny Barrel Proofs tend to have for me is like a raspberry, cherry, berry note. Like none of these really have a lot of fruit. And I think that might be dinging this year a little bit in my mind in terms of the quality. But B524, if you're looking for a sweeter kind of candy bar experience, it's definitely fitting the bill. Which means first place is the rebranded look C924. I think this is the most wheat forward. I really felt like there was a developing oak on this one, which is fascinating. Maybe this is slightly older, I don't know. But it's got this slight older oak, but big wheat. It's like a Wheaties experience, and the chocolate is all over it. The other thing I wanted to note was the way the spice works on C924 compared to these other two. Almost no astringency, which is key. The way the spice works on C924 is it slowly rolls itself out on the back end of the palate and into the finish. B524, A124, they had different kinds of spice, but they were a little bit more astringent, back of the throat, aggressive. C924 has this rounded spiciness that kind of slowly grows. And the way the wheat really comes through is awesome. You know, the more I go back to it, I think this one has that cherry essence to it too. So I might have been wrong in saying that the fruit isn't there. This one might have that fruit, and that might be what is giving it an extra layer, an extra edge tonight. As I smell it, this is going to be a crazy comparison. The thing it reminds me of is I have an old Fitz 13 year from this year, which has this dusty, oaky, cherry jam kind of thing. And it's got a little of that on the nose. Makes sense, they're both wheated profiles from Heaven Hill. This is, 1/4 of that, I think, in terms of the overall quality and experience. But it's very, very solid. And what's going to happen is this Larceny C9 24 is going to go into my Whiskey of the Year bracket. So we are going to see how it stands up to the rest. Maybe I'll be proven wrong thinking that there wasn't a truly stellar batch, because I think the more I explore this one, the more I really like it. It is the most recent one that I've got, still opening up, but man, it's pretty good, and it definitely stood out among the pack today with that huge wheat presence that just is sweet and rounded. Okay, everybody, that's gonna wrap it up. I would be fascinated to know if you've been able to taste all three of Larceny Barrel Proofs this year. What did you think was the best? And also just fascinated to know where you stand with the Larceny Barrel Proof series. Do you find one a year, wait for the best one, and then decide to go get that one? How do you kind of relate to this line of whiskey? While you're at it, please consider hitting the like button on this video. That's what gets it out to the most people. And then if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the Bourbon Hutch. We're planning to release a lot more awesome content all the way through 2025, and I want you to be part of that journey. So if you haven't already, subscribe and join. Till I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.